So one of the more basic models, one of the seminal models in economics that we're going to be using, that a lot of you that have already had micro are well aware of, but now we're going to be looking at it from the macroeconomic perspective, is the supply and demand model. And so just to get some of these definitions in our notes, I will be as brief as possible here. Demand is the amount of some good or service that consumers are both, and so this is important, they have to be both willing and able to purchase at each price, or at the respective price, whatever that is. The price is obviously what the buyer pays for a good. When we talk about demand, we always want to separate between demand and quantity demanded. So demand is a schedule. Demand is telling us how much consumers are willing to pay at each price. Quantity demanded is a very similar definition, but there's an important distinction. It's the amount of goods and services, and I'm just going to say, it's the amount of goods and services that consumers are both willing and able to purchase. And instead of at each price, this is now at a given price. So quantity demanded would be, for instance, for when the good is $20. The demand has to do when the good could be, $1 to, essentially infinity, right? So demand is the full range of the price. The quantity demanded is a specific point along the demand curve. This should all be clearer once we graph it out. When we are graphing supply and demand, there's a couple of mnemonics that can help us in terms of figuring out where to put things. So we start with an L, right? That is the first quadrant of the Cartesian coordinate plane. The reason why we only use the first quadrant is because we're not using negative numbers, because negative prices and negative quantities don't really make any sense. So we're only using positive prices and positive quantities, right? If we have to remember, which one goes where? The price goes somewhere, the quantity goes another place, right? The price is always going to go on the y-axis, and the quantity is always going to go on the x-axis. And the way that I remember this is I use the mnemonic of the alphabet song, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, right? So the P comes before the Q, right? Just like this price comes before this quantity if we're looking at it left to right. So that's the mnemonic that I use and teach students in order to remember where to actually put the price and the quantity on these graphs. When we're talking about demand, we are talking about something that is a downward sloping curve. If we need to remember that demand is downward sloping, all we need to do is remember that demand starts with D, right? D is for downward sloping just as much as it is for demand. And it bothers me that I wrote downward upwards, but it is what it is. And when we're talking about demand and quantity demanded, the quantity demanded are points along the demand curve. So we would say, when the price is at 25, the quantity demanded is 500 units. When the price is at 20, the quantity demanded is 750 units. When the price is 15, the quantity demanded is 1,000 units. Questions on demand, what it is? Okay. So there's a law of demand that states that as the price decreases, consumers will want more of it, which just makes sense, right? We've all experienced that. You know, we go to the store, it's a good that we're used to buying, especially if it's like a snack good that'll keep for a few months, right? And all of a sudden, you know, it's $2 less than it was. So we buy, you know, 5 of them instead of 2 of them, right? Price goes down, we increase the demand for things. Almost always. There's always exceptions. Questions on demand? Okay. Let's talk about supply. So supply, you can't see that very well. No, that one either. Well, we'll just do this one. So supply is similar to demand, but it's the flip side. Instead of being on the consumer side, we are now on the producer side. So this is the amount of some good or service that a producer is willing to supply at each price. So similarly to demand, there's supply and then there's quantity supplied. Which is the amount of goods and services a producer is willing to supply at a specific price. And so again, we draw our L, our first quadrant of the Cartesian coordinate plane. We sing ourselves the alphabet song. We put our price over here. We put our Q down here. With supply, the slope of it is right in the name, upward sloping. So it's an upward sloping curve. The up is right in the name. And when we're talking about the quantity supplied, we're talking about, again, at specific prices. At $25, the suppliers are willing to provide 1,000 of these goods. At $20, they're getting less, so maybe they're willing to spend less time open, or spend less time selling, or spend less time doing the consulting or servicing it or whatever, right? And when the price falls even more, they are increasingly disincentivized from producing that good or service and bringing it to the market. Questions about supply? All right, let's put them all together. So equilibrium is the combination so it is the point where everything that is demanded is supplied. So we could also think about this as it's the price where the quantity demanded is equal to our quantity supplied. And it is the point where everything that's produced and supplied is purchased. So again, this would be the price where the quantity supplied is equal to the quantity demanded. When we put this together in graphical form, it looks like the following thing. Maybe, if I can draw a straight line. Questions? So we really just find where X meets the spot. We draw a dashed line out to the P star, and we draw another dashed line down to this Q star. Now, if we were to have some sort of situation where the price drifted above the equilibrium price, right? If we were at some sort of P high, then that would result in a quantity demanded that is too low compared to the quantity supplied at that particular price. And so this particular circumstance would be called a surplus. A surplus is defined when at a certain price, the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. When firms have a surplus, what are they going to do? They're going to lower the price. Why are they going to lower the price? Well, it's expensive to store this stuff. Not only is it expensive, if it's perishable, it's going to rot. If it's not perishable, it might lose value just because times are changing, right? If you had been sitting on a bunch of Blu-ray players, those don't do you very much good anymore, right? Everybody wants a 4K player. So even if it's something that doesn't go bad because of natural spoliation or something like that, it could go bad because it could become outdated. So producers are incentivized to lower the price to get rid of surpluses because surpluses are expensive to maintain. Costs money to warehouse that stuff, and half a loaf is better than none. You'd rather get some money than none. What if the price was too low? If the price was too low, then reflecting that price off of my quantity supply graph would give me a quantity supplied that is far lower or far fewer than my quantity demanded. In a situation like this, we would call this a shortage. So in this case, it is usually in the firm's best interest to increase the price because right now they're leaving money on the table by not serving all of these customers, right? If they increase the price to this equilibrium price, then the new quantity demanded would be down here. So essentially there's all of these customers right here that they're not serving just because of the fact that they've priced themselves too low. And so the firms are going to be naturally incentivized to increase the price until they get to a point where there's no longer excess supply or excess demand. Questions on equilibrium? All right. So this is definitely going to be a reading quiz.